another aircraft question. There's been a more concern voiced by the Army about the use of drones in general against U.S. forces in the future. Can you give us a sense of how ISIL is using drones in the last 5 or 6 months in the Mosul operation and to counter shaping operations in Raqqa?
Yep, what we've seen in Mosul is that the enemy is using commercial off-the-shelf drones mainly, but also improvised drones to surveil the areas where the Iraqi security forces are advancing, and they also use them to drop mainly grenade-sized munitions on the enemy and on civilian areas. They're really very indiscriminate about where they're dropping. These are not really strategic capabilities. They're not game changers. It's not going to stop what's happening on the battlefield, which is them losing, being pushed out of areas, and getting killed. But it does present a tremendous amount of danger to people on the ground when we see these. The enemy has used them sometimes where multiple drones have been used at one time. Of course, that is a capability that certainly will get attention and require the Iraqi security forces to take measures to put a stop to that. Most recently, though, we've been able to provide some capabilities on the battlefield to disrupt that. So that's electronic warfare capabilities, and then, of course, the enemy, is really limited in their technical expertise. So we've got these electronic warfare capabilities. We can't go into a tremendous amount of detail about exactly how that's going to work, but we can move capabilities where they need to be in order to stop the enemy from being more effective. We've seen a lot fewer munition drops recently, although occasionally we still do see that. But one of the things that's kind of an interesting conundrum for the enemy is we have the ability to disrupt them when they want to use these. The Iraqi security forces have turned the tables and begun to use them as well. The enemy has no such capability other than to fire at the Iraqi security forces drones, and the Iraqis are seeing some success against the enemy in using these capabilities to take out snipers, to take out improvised explosive, vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices that are parked, and to just sort of terrorize them. So that's kind of the state of play with regard to enemy use of drones, and then the Iraqis' use of drones as well.
Quick follow-up. Have these counter technologies been rushed to Iraq over the last 5 or 6 months as part of these joint urgent requirements?
Throughout our tenure here, this has been an issue that leadership has paid attention to. And certainly we've gotten a significant amount of help from Washington and Tampa to get capabilities into theater to address this threat. Again, all along, everyone recognized that this is not going to change the outcome of the battle. The enemy has been going backwards for more than 2 years. They're not going to be able to stop the Iraqi security forces. The coalition is going to continue to hammer them with air and artillery strikes until they are completely and totally defeated in Mosul and other places around Iraq. But that's not a problem that we're just going to leave the enemy to do what they want to do. We're going to take their ability to disrupt any kind of operation or to harm people away. The enemy has been very determined, and sometimes they're creative. So what we've done is we've worked with the Iraqi security forces. Our forces are more creative than ISIS, I can assure you that, and so are the Iraqi security forces, and that's why you see the tables being turned and the enemy on the back foot.
Okay, Sam Legrone.
Hi. Thanks for the time, Colonel Dorrian. I just want to check on the status of the Deconfliction agreement, the MOU with the Russians. Russian state media yesterday reported that they had reaffirmed, or Russia had reaffirmed, the tenets of the 2015 MOU. And I was just checking to see with y'all what that current status is. Thank you.
Yep, I've seen those same reports. It's very encouraging that they've acknowledged that, and it is important for safety of flight for our operations and for theirs as we both continue fighting ISIS in Syria and we continue our operations in Iraq. That operation, the deconfliction line is indeed, it has been working really nonstop. And that's something that's going to continue. So that's an encouraging thing to see that acknowledged.
Great. Ma'am in the back.
G with Al Jazeera English. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is reporting that in the last 48 hours, at least 16 civilians were killed in coalition airstrikes in the Raqqa countryside. Have you seen those reports, and could you comment on that?
I didn't catch all of your question. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is saying something. I didn't catch. That's where you broke up.
Saying that in the last 48 hours, at least 16 civilians were killed in coalition airstrikes in the Raqqa countryside. Have you seen those reports, and could you comment on them?
You know what, I've seen a lot of reports come out. I don't think that I could, I've seen so many from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights that I don't think that I could comment without seeing the specific one in writing with date, time, and location. I don't know that you've given me enough information that I would be able to confirm that. What I would say, though, is that the conduct of airstrikes and artillery strikes, not one thing has changed with regard to our priority for the protection of civilians. We're doing these strikes to support the Iraqi security forces' advance and our Syrian partners' advance into extraordinarily dangerous territory, fighting an enemy that has murdered tens of thousands of people and driven millions of them from their homes. I would point out that more than 2.6 million people have been able to return to their homes since the coalition began conducting airstrikes in support of our partners. And I would submit to you that I don't know what the fraction would be of that progress, but it's probably a small fraction without those precision air and artillery strikes. We only use precision-guided munitions. We coordinate all of our strikes with the Iraqi security forces and gather extensive information before we conduct our strikes. But these are a solution to the problem that ISIS has posed with their brutal control measures on the people of Syria and the people of Iraq. And we must continue to conduct airstrikes. We'll do so very, very carefully, but those strikes must continue.
See if I can get the precise information to you, but I had a second question, which was I wanted to see if you could give us an update on the status of the investigation into the March 17th strike in which in West Mosul, in which there were reports that up to 300 civilians were killed.
Yep, we are going to release a report on that strike. That'll be done once it's complete and coordinated with all the appropriate parties and agencies. Certainly we'll want to make sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. We have an Air Force officer, Brigadier General Matt Eisler, who's conducting the investigation. He has extensive experience and expertise. We're going to pause again.
Attention in the chancery. This is a drill for the Marine Guards only. Please do not react. I say again, this is a drill for the Marine Guards only. Please do not react. There is an intruder in the chancery. Lock all doors and report anything suspicious to your office wardens. At this time, all personnel secure all classified material and remain in your office spaces. Do not attempt to capture or interfere with the intruders. Stand by for further instruction by post 1.
Okay. So General Eisler is in the process of finishing up his report on that, and then it'll be coordinated. What I can tell you is that he visited the site. He's interviewed many, many witnesses. He's done engineering work with our subject matter experts in structures. He's worked closely with our munitions people to understand what effects the munitions that were used in that area should have created. And he's worked with our intelligence experts to review the surveillance footage that we have available on this. All those things have been done, and we're going to make sure that it's a very thorough inspection. We will release it. We just don't have the exact timing on that. That's something that we'll owe you as a due out.
Will Brigadier General Eisler be available then for questions once the report is published?
Well, we'll have to owe you an answer on that. I know that we're going to release a report. Who's going to be there to answer questions remains to be seen. We'll get back to you on that. You know, I would point out that more extensive efforts to avoid civilian casualties than have ever been done by any coalition in history are being employed over Syria and Iraq, and none of that has changed. This is a very unfortunate incident, and it's certainly not the types of effects that we hope to achieve, but the fact remains that there has never been a coalition that's worked more closely with partners and employed more resources and done more to avoid civilian casualties than is being done now. One of the things that's very important to understand is that even with the very best technology ever employed, even with the most robust procedures employed, even with the very best of intentions and the highest level of efforts, and that's what we put into this, the people that are involved in this are not perfect, nor is the technology. It's the best that has ever been employed, but perfection is probably an unachievable goal for all of us. Our very best effort is what we seek to achieve, and whenever there's an unfortunate incident of this nature, it's heartbreaking, and we will dig into it deeply to try to figure out what could have been done better, if anything, and to take steps to mitigate the risks. That is what we can and will do. But our partners are counting on us to provide air and artillery support. We believe that we have saved many of their lives as they take this very, very dangerous and difficult task of digging into a very entrenched enemy and dislodging them from Iraq's second most populous city and other areas around Iraq and Syria. So this is something that we have to continue. We're going to continue to work on this, and we will be very transparent as we have been with the results of our investigations.